Good morning, class. It's Tuesday. Kate Chopin, born Catherine O'Flaherty, was born on February 8th, 1850, and died on August 22nd, 1904, of a brain hemorrhage. She was an American author of short stories and novels based out of Louisiana. She is now considered by some scholars to have been a forerunner of American 20th century feminist authors of Southern or Catholic background. In her work, she gives a lot of attention to themes having to do with self-discovery. Like, you could claim that she discovered herself as she wrote her characters discovering themselves. There's a lot of great evidence for that, and you could make a really good argument about her themes of self-discovery. However, I think that she was a lot more focused on teaching us to discover other people than she was trying to teach us to discover ourselves. She used her stories to try and show us to see other people as the complex, emotional, scarred, different people that they are. Her mom was French and her father was Irish. She was born in Missouri, but she spent most of her time in Louisiana, which is where most of her stories take place too. She was the only one of her parents' 5 kids to live to the age of 25. She was educated by her great-grandmother, and she also went to a Catholic school and was taught by nuns. She wrote stories about women and about people of color that showed a different angle than what was usually written at that time. She grew up in a time and place of great racial conflict, and that shows really heavily in her writing and also in her own story. She was denied admission into the St. Louis Fine Art Club based on the publication of her book, The Awakening. She learned that society wasn't always going to tolerate her questions and her writing and her beliefs. Her works were not always allowed to be published and distributed because of the place she lived and the time that she lived there. This can only mean that either she wrote lies or she wrote the truth and it offended people. Kate Chopin's writing style was heavily influenced by her admiration for Guy de Maupassant. Of his writing, she said, "I read his stories and marveled at them. Here was life, not fiction. For where were the plots, the old-fashioned mechanism and stage trapping that in a vague, unthinkable way I had fancied were essential to the art of story-making? Here was a man who had escaped from tradition and authority, who had entered into himself and looked out upon life through his own being and with his own eyes, and who in a direct and simple way told us what he saw." Chopin went beyond Maupassant's technique and style to give her writing its own flavor. Like Maupassant in The Necklace, in both Desiree's Baby and The Story of an Hour, she built up this grand imagery. She created a story based on false ideas and then dashed the visual imagery and the story to pieces in the last lines. She's essentially, like Maupassant, giving us 2 stories out of 1. She gives us the story that's written, and then she also gives us this whole other story, the truth that neither the characters nor the reader know until the very, very end. Both the characters and the reader are forced into this stark moment of truth. Chopin and Maupassant use their stories to teach us that not everything is always as it seems. We get to see that people aren't always what they seem. And we get to learn that that's okay. She had an ability to perceive life and creatively express it. She concentrated on women's lives and their continual struggles to create an identity of their own within the Southern society of the late 19th century. For instance, in The Story of an Hour, Mrs. Mallard allows herself time to reflect after learning of her husband's death. Instead of dreading the lonely years ahead, she stumbles upon another realization altogether. She knew that she would weep again when she saw the kind, tender hands folded in death. The face that had never looked save with love upon her, fixed and gray and dead. But she saw beyond that bitter moment a long procession of years to come that would belong to her absolutely, and she opened and spread her arms out to them in welcome. Chopin gave Mrs. Mallard the ability to imagine a rich and meaningful life for herself without the presence of a man. That's something that society today is still sometimes struggling to understand. Kate was neither a feminist nor a suffragist. She said so herself. She was nonetheless a woman who took women extremely seriously. She never doubted women's ability to be strong. Kate Chopin's sympathies lay with the individual in the context of his or her personal life and society. She wasn't trying to make a statement or fight. She was simply trying to show people as people, with real problems and real feelings. Most readers, myself included, are typically surprised at the ending twist in Desiree's Baby. But Kate Chopin left clues throughout the whole story, trying to give us a hint at the end. The issue is that lots of the clues make you think something's wrong, something's not quite right. You can't quite put your finger on what it is. Armand is described as having a dark, handsome face, which my brain took as put this guy in the category of tall, dark, and handsome. In reality, she was giving us a hint that this guy's skin is not the color of cottage cheese. Madame Valmont, thinking that there's something off about the way the baby looks, makes the reader uneasy, but they still can't quite figure out why. Desiree had mentioned to her adoptive mother that the baby cried so loud that her husband could hear it as far away as La Blanche's cabin. La Blanche was the mixed-race slave boy. I'm sorry, but what was he doing in La Blanche's cabin? Why was he there? Did Desiree come to the conclusion that there was something off about her baby because his skin was the same color as the slave boy's, or because his physical features were the same as the slave? It would not be very hard to make an argument that La Blanche and Desiree's baby could be siblings. When she was pleading with her husband for mercy, Desiree says, "My hands are wider than yours." Kate Chopin went to all that work to put all those hints in there to show that people aren't always what they seem, and to show that something like having a dark, handsome face can mean different things to different people and in different contexts. Armand's mother tried really, really hard to hide the fact that both she and her son had mixed blood, but Desiree's adoptive mother was really, really open about the fact that they didn't know where Desiree came from. They were really candid up front at the beginning of the story about, you're gonna marry this girl and you don't know where she came from, what her blood is. And Armand said he didn't care, but then later had a tantrum. Kate Chopin created all of this cognitive dissonance where you wonder if his mother did the right thing, if it really matters if she did the right thing. By ending the story with a giant twist like that, it leaves the reader with all of these questions about what the characters will do with the information that they've been given. It's a struggle for the reader to resolve for themselves in the same way that it would be very difficult for the characters to resolve. Sometimes we disagree with ourselves, and that's okay. Mrs. Mallard was both happy and sad to hear the news of her husband's supposed death. It's okay to have mixed feelings. It just shows that we're complex people and that other people are complex as well. Kate Chopin used her stories to teach us that our ideas and our beliefs about people, though usually based on some form of the truth, are not the whole truth. She also taught us that in discovering more about other people, we can discover more about ourselves, which I think is one of the best kinds of self-discovery. Thank you. See you on Friday.